Hey everyone, how's it going? So I've been wanting to make this video since the moment Rift was first shown off. The real big thing is, what is better, Hunt 13 or Rift? And finally somebody came up with a very helpful post right here doing a lot of the math, and a lot in the comments as well. And I'm not very good at math. I almost failed geometry in high school, so I've been waiting for something like this for a while. Thank God that they actually came up with this. And there's also another thing I want to quickly talk about too, is Tristenwulf made this spreadsheet right here, where he's approximating kind of how much energy per day you'll have to spend and how much energy it takes per run and everything. So these are rough estimations. He has like a normal chart for like normal people and then one for whale. But if you actually have your team set up and your units, you're probably going to be more in the like whale tier list that he has. But essentially it takes a lot of energy to start up Rift, but then it gets more efficient where you're only doing 2 runs for every single clear and then eventually 1 run. So there's a lot of startup and you have to spend a ton of energy overall per day on average to be able to complete the entire season, depending on if it takes 4 or 5 or 6 months, because they didn't give us an approximate time. They just said 4 to 6 months. We don't really know exactly when, but it takes a lot of energy to complete the whole season. So essentially this whole thing is the person did the math, and they come up to an approximate of a 21% chance for an epic to drop. And I think later on in the post, they approximate closer to 22% chance for an epic to drop every single time you clear one. And so I won't bore you with all the math, but they have a lot of useful stuff. I'll put this in the below the video as well. But essentially, in terms of acquiring epic gear, 4 entry Rift is worse than Hunt 13 and Hunt Buff 13. 3 entry Rift is better than Hunt 13 and worse than Hunt Buff 13. 2 entry Rift is better than Hunt Buff 13. And 1 entry Rift is significantly better than Hunt Buff 13. Now keep in mind, this is purely just the drops. This is not including the crafting map that you're going to get from Hunt and be able to then craft the gear with. This is just assuming only drops, the odds of you getting epic gear and how worth it is compared to doing Hunt Buff. So they also have like a useful chart of all of the other drops, so like epic charms, greater charms, lesser charms, reforged mats. As you can see, reforged mats is almost all the drops, and a very small chance, like 1% chance of an epic charm. But so overall, when you look at this, it paints it in the light that Rift is way better than Hunt. Like, don't even bother doing Hunt at all. Rift completely is king. But now we got to consider the crafting, and so this is where we start to look in the comments. So I think down here, this post by Quiztolan is kind of the most helpful one. So this guy likes to do a lot of math on Reddit. He really gets into it. And I won't bore you with all the details. But so essentially when they first compare the things, and it seems like Rift is actually just better than Hunt 13. But then you have to consider some other things, because when pieces of gear are dropping in Rift, they're random. Sure, it's amazing that you only choose 4 sets that you all want, right? When you're doing something like Wyvern, you're often getting a set that you really don't want. Hit set. Most people don't really want that. People want speed set almost all the time, then maybe a little bit of crit set, and then not really any hit set overall, because it's usually just kind of crummy gear. So 1/3 of all drops are essentially just useless most of the time. But if you look at something like this with Rift, you don't even get to choose what you're crafting, because when you're doing Hunt, you get the crafting mats. You can choose, oh, I want to make helms or weapons or chest pieces. Most people are not crafting necks, rings, and boots because they have so many main stats, and it's kind of just crappy to craft them most of the time. The odds of you getting something good is so low. But the thing is with Rift, let's say approximately half of the pieces of gear are rings, necks, and boots. That means most of them are going to be junk. That means half of the reds you're going to be getting is probably just going to be a piece that's kind of crappy with a garbage main stat. So they start to factor all this stuff in. And based on these conditions, Hunt 13 outside of Hunt Buff looks to fall somewhere in between Rift, so 2 runs of Rift or 3 runs of Rift in value. But Hunt 13 Buff is slightly better than Rift with 2 runs, and it's approximately the same as Rift in 1 run. So Hunt 13 with buffs during a Hunt event is actually about as good as Rift in 1 run. So that's something that's really important. But then we can choose the set of the epic craft gear. This is the next part that's really important, because epic craft gear, you know, every 30 crafts you do or something like that, you get to choose the exact set that you want and make a red piece for that. That's really big, and you can't do that for Rift either. So they go through the math as well. And so essentially what they say is, if it only takes 1 run to clear a Rift, it's very efficient to do. And otherwise you should wait for buff events to do Hunt for it to be kind of better. And overall, Rift seems good if you're able to clear in a low amount of runs, but you have to think about the opportunity cost. Now look at this right here. So obviously people are going to have varying amounts. Some people are at level 8 right now and are able to clear in 1 run, which is really impressive. You need good gear, units, and planning for that, of course. But what's important is there's a lot of cost at the beginning, like a front-loaded cost that you have to spend of a bunch of wasted energy before it starts getting efficient. So then if you're comparing running Hunt to Rift, because Rift is going to swap out every 4 to 6 months, and you have to make a new team, and you're going to waste more energy, etc. Starting up your whole like Rift hunting empire, right? So then if you're comparing all that energy you spend at the beginning, well, Hunt is efficient from the very first run and you don't waste energy even on a fail, then it starts to kind of make you think, well, maybe Hunt is kind of about the same, if not better overall. Now, if you're farming insanely hard, like let's say you're a whale and you're going crazy, you're spending tons and tons of money on energy all the time, well, then Rift might actually be a little bit more efficient for you because you'll be clearing in 1 run, and once you get all that early cost out of the way, then you're just farming constant purples and reds. You're not getting blue gear, and you're only getting the 4 sets that you're actually purposely looking for. So that makes it really, really efficient, especially if you're just trying to get a mass amount of good gear. And hell, a lot of people don't want to craft right side pieces because most of them are going to be crap, but that is also the best way to be able to get pieces for it, right? Like, you can't only use the gem boxes to get right side pieces, especially if you're trying to get a large amount. So you'll be able to speed check, you'll get some faster gear on the neck and ring positions, and you might get lucky and get some decent drops as well, even though a lot of them are going to be crappy, because that's a really big thing to keep in mind. Because if you're just getting a ton of neck and ring and boot drops, I mean, almost all of them are going to be just complete garbage straight away, like before you even roll it. So most of those pieces of gear are just taken out. So even though you have something like Wyvern that has hit set in it that's so crappy, so like 1/3 of drops is kind of junky, at the same time, Rift has the same problem where a bunch of your gear is just instantly dead on arrival because it's necks, rings, and boots, which is a really big problem. And in Hunt, you actually have a higher chance of finding left side gear, while you have a slightly lower chance of finding right side gear, which is something to definitely keep in mind as well. But it seems like from all this math, the conclusion they eventually come up with is they think that Rift is the ideal way to spend energy if we can get the consistent 1 energy clears. So I guess law of big numbers, when you eventually get to the point where you're only doing 1 Rift clears, then you're able to get a ton of them complete within this 4 to 6 months. It might actually be pretty efficient and pretty worthwhile. And gear is the most important thing. But something that you really have to keep in mind is you're also getting other things when you're farming Hunt. So sometimes you get the energy drop, which kind of just refunds the run, but sometimes you get sky stones, or you get bookmarks, or you get mystics, or you get powder. And a lot of people might not really care too much about those things, but when you're a newer player, or, you know, just very free to play, maybe even more casual, it can actually stack up and make a difference. So overall, if the two things are relatively similar between Hunt 13 and Rift, oh, you're getting all these little bonus things out of running Rift. That's actually a pretty nice bonus. That actually really adds to it. While if you're a super endgame player or somebody that's just willing to spend money to pull over all these characters, something like Rift actually becomes a lot more efficient for you because you don't want any of those other things. They're useless to you. And also, if you're trying to farm for a specific set, so let's say speed set, well, running Wyvern 13 seems to be a little more efficient because you're diluting your pool more by running something like Rift, and that's something you really have to keep in mind. So it depends on what sets you yourself are trying to farm. Now, if there's 4 awesome sets that you're fine with any of, so like, let's say you're looking for like injury, pen, lifesteal, speed set, and you're just fine with whatever drops, then that's perfect. That means something like Rift is dropping only the things you want, so it becomes really efficient to farm. So essentially, the entire thing seems like, overall, I don't think too much is going to change in Epic 7. I think a lot of people are going to be farming a whole lot of hunts. I think some people might go into the Rift and start really grinding that out because it seems efficient just in terms of total number of red epic pieces that you're getting. But especially when you're trying to chase after speed gear and stuff like that, Hunt 13 for Wyvern is just going to be so much more efficient for you. So it really depends exactly what you're farming and why. And also, especially with these energy costs front-loaded at the beginning, it just takes so much to start up that it might overall make it not that efficient for you, especially if you can't get it started up fast enough. So it's definitely going to be people who are really just investing tons of energy that get so much more efficiency out of it. So anyways, I've been waiting for this kind of math for a while, not only for myself, but just so that I could talk to other people about it. And if there's any other updates, I'll probably release another video with a little bit more definitive math. But I want to talk about this because I think a lot of people are thinking like, well, Rift seems like it has a lot of potential, but is it actually worth it? Is it actually going to end up being what everyone wants to be farming? Is it the true new end game farming spot for all end game players? That's where you want to be. And it seems like, in conclusion, overall, not really that amazing. You get the nice rewards in the season stuff, but they're not really that amazing. Then that you can get 15%ed, so sometimes your 1 run becomes a 2 run, and that's a problem too. So it seems like Hunt 13 is overall pretty good. So if you're farming a ton of Hunt 13, don't feel bad and be like, oh, I'm missing out on Rift. I'm screwed. Other than the season rewards, you're not really losing out on too much extra or anything like that, and keep doing your hunt buffs in whatever hunt that you want to do, rather than just spamming it all in Rift as well. So I think that's really important to talk about and acknowledge, and if you have any thoughts, just leave them in the comments, because I think this is a very interesting thing to talk about. So anyways, thanks a bunch for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like or subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you next time.